Hey guys, what's going on? Tom here with another tutorial type thing, and in this one I'm going to teach you guys how to use Mocha to kind of like remove objects and kind of replace them. And I have a really cool example. I know there's some tutorials of this that already exist, like saying how to remove street signs and stuff, but that's not really cool. I wouldn't actually see myself using it for that, so I'm actually using a pretty cool example. I have this footage of me kind of like waving my head in a circle in front of the camera. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna delete my mouth and just put skin over it. So yeah, we're gonna turn me into an alien. So just take your footage you want. I have like 22 frames worth. Just make sure that is as high quality as you can get it. Make sure it's in focus, all that. Okay, good. And then once you have your footage, obviously you want it. You can either use Mocha AE or Mocha Pro. I prefer Mocha Pro because it has more of the remove features. So make sure to render it in a very high quality. I like QuickTime on max settings. We can go to the desktop. What did I think I called it? Yeah, there you go. YouTube face track, and I'll call the clip face track. Make sure you name your clips. Very good for organization, and then render your 20 frames. Okay, any moment now. I do have like 3 programs open, so, you know, maybe a bit slow, but that's fine. Once you have that rendered out, you can open up Mocha, and let's actually create a new project, and choose our clip from the same folder, because we're using the same clip. So face track, open, and let's let that import for a sec. And what I'm about to do is very important because we're gonna set our directory for Mocha, and we're gonna be using clean plates and stuff like that. So it's kind of important that you do it as well. Okay, let me make sure I had the right area specified. Okay, I did. So make sure you have the same frame rate and everything. Go to advanced, cache your clip, and then save your project in the same folder. Okay, then make sure everything else is good, and then you can actually start your project. Okay, it's gonna cache the clip so we don't have to play it back every time, or load it back every time. Okay. So we have about 50 or so frames of me kind of like moving my head around in all my glory. So before we actually remove the mouth, what we're gonna need to do is actually track the same plane. Since my face, I wouldn't say it's like a flat face, but you know, it's pretty much the same plane except for the nose. We can just track any part of the face we want to. So let's create an X spline. Let's just kind of have it like wrap around here. Get as much detail as we can get. There we go. So once you have your X spline, I'm going to set mine to luminance because there's not that much color in this other than for the red of my lips. Set the pixels used to 90%. And if the shot you're using has perspective, like me tilting my head, add perspective and shear if you're just tracking a sign. And it doesn't have perspective, you don't need that. Okay, make sure everything else is good, and then hopefully we'll get a good track. So let's try that. Of course, if it doesn't work, you could always try to make another spline. So far, so good. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be rather close. Okay. You see the mask is kind of morphing around just a bit, but you know, it's generally staying in the same area. Okay. Make sure you have a good track, then just rename your layer to like face track or something. Cool. Okay, so now we have our general track, but we want only to remove the lips or mouth area. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna zoom in, and we're actually we're gonna mask it off. So grab your X spline, which will make a new layer, and just kind of get the general area. Obviously closer than your first spline, like this. That's good. I'm gonna smooth this out a bit. You just hold Control A, then kind of round off the edges. There you go. Okay, and then I'm also going to rename this layer to mouth. Now, oh wait, I added a parenthesis or something at the end. Okay, now you see if I play this, the track is there, but the mouth thing is not. Now we do not need to retrack it because we did track the face, so all you do is you go to your mouth layer, go to link to track, and then select your face track. And what that does is it parents it to the face layer, so it will inherit the same movement. So now if we go through this, you see it's moving quite well. I do see a little problem. I'm gonna add a few keyframes. Just make sure you have all the mouth in the mask at all times. Keyframing it won't change your tracking data, so don't be worried about that. Okay, and then a bit at the end here for good measure. Okay, that looks good. So now if I zoom out and let's see. If I zoom out and play this, we have a pretty good track. Now, obviously, the better your track is, the better your remove might be. So you may as well add some like tracking marker dots or whatever, because you can remove those as well. I'm not doing it because it's just a tutorial, and this was actually a decent track. Okay, so once we have all our tracking data, we're going to start removing now. So I'm going to go to the remove panel. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to export a clean plate, and then we're going to edit that. So what I mean by that is we're going to take the first frame and then go to Photoshop, delete my lips, and then track it from there on. There's also a removal algorithm here in Mocha. I don't use it, but it's good for like removing like little like dots or blemishes, because then it averages out the area around it. But you don't want to use it for a big area like, you know, your lips or something. So once you're in the remove panel, make sure your first frame's at 1, your last frame's at whatever it is. Mine's 52. Okay, and let's see, I want to find a good frame. I think the first frame will be fine, but let's see if the last one's good. I kind of like the first frame better. So what we're going to do, make sure you're on the first frame, make sure your input clip is correct, and then you can create a clean plate, which you see is here. It made a TIFF file in your directory, so that's why you had to save it in your certain area. And then we're gonna open up Photoshop or whatever photo editing thing. You could also do this in After Effects, I guess. Okay, sweet. And then load your picture. Let me open up Photoshop and okay, there we go. And you see we actually have our clean plate over here. It saved this image as a TIFF. Just drag that over. Let that load for a second. Photoshop isn't the fastest, and you see we have our first frame. Now, removal stuff in Photoshop, I mean, you should probably find a tutorial of your own. If you don't know how to use Photoshop, but I'll show you the basic gist. I'll duplicate the first layer, and we could clone stamp, but I think I might know a faster way. Let's actually section this area off. Actually, we can probably get more specific than that. Let's get a good mask around here. There we go, and then if you hit Shift F5, it will open up content to where. Let's see if that looks any good. It's not bad. I mean, it does a decent job. I'm gonna do some cleanup work. Let me just deselect this mask. To edit it further, I would recommend the patch tool. Select the area that looks really, really bad, like this area right here, and drag it over a bit more skin. I think this is a good sample over here. And we'll kind of edit that in. Make sure it looks good, because your removal's as good as the track and your Photoshop work or whatever program you're using. Just make sure you get rid of those like clear lines that show that you like Photoshopped or whatever. Okay, it's almost looking good. We'll do a few more samples. One right there. And even if you want to, I'm gonna try this out. I don't know if it's gonna work. You can even paint a bit. This takes probably a bit more skill. Let I'm gonna see how that goes. We'll take a smaller size. Needs a bit of touch-up work over here. Now you see these lines look very brown and dark. We can fix that. We can lower the opacity. And then we could also add a, make sure your layer is selected. And then you can add a, I'm gonna use a box blur. We can lower that to like 39. And then you see it's a very small difference, but if I disable, enable, a very tiny touch-up, that will pretty much help. So, once you're good with that, of course, if you need a tutorial, look up a Photoshop tutorial. But once you're done, just save your image, and then you can save it in the same area as the same name, because we're going to replace it. Make sure it's a TIFF. It's very important. And yes, replace it. Okay, image compression. We don't need the layers, so do that. And okay, that looks good. And there we go. We have exported our frame. Go back to Mocha. And then you can go to edit your clean plate. Now, it should already replace it because it has the same name. But if you're not sure, you can delete. And then you click this button over here. That gives you a new frame. Go to your directory. And then you see we have this image without my mouth, so we'll add that in. And then make sure for your frame number, it's whatever frame you said. So I think this was the first frame. Then click OK. Now all we have to do is render this out. So if I go to this little render button over here, and I just click that. First let me disable overlays. So if I click the little render button, it does take a second because Mocha has to calculate because it also does lighting. And you see it pretty much replaces it with this little vague line. Now obviously you can fix that up. What I like to do is once you're in the remove window, change your illumination model to either linear or interpolate. Basically what that does is it calculates the area around it and then kind of matches the lighting to the best of its ability. So if we go to linear, might look a bit better. Usually it looks a bit better over time. I mean, the rest of the work you probably want to do in Photoshop. So either use linear or interpolate. Interpolate's more if you're like moving around a lot, which I guess I kind of am. Bring up that smoothening level. And you can kind of just like re-render these frames over and over again. As much as you want to. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do the best job here because, you know, it's not that important. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use it on... I'll use it on interpolate, and you can just hit render forward. It works like tracking. Now, this, I mean, depending on your footage, this can take a long time. And what it actually does is it renders through your frames and exports them into your directory. You see, it gives us two things. It gives us the remove. Oh, wait, let's close Photoshop. We don't need that anymore. Oh, wait, I keep opening up Photoshop. Don't need this. We can just use photo viewer. So you see, it kind of goes frame by frame and removes it. And it also gives us a matte of it, which is pretty useful when we're going back into After Effects. And make sure you have both the matte and the removal, or the render, because it's very useful. And you see it's not doing a perfect job, but it's doing good enough, a good enough job that we can actually clean this up. Now, obviously I'm not going to let the whole thing render, because that will take ages, but we can edit the first like 15 frames or so, I guess. So once you're back in After Effects, just import your files. You do that by going over the first frame. Okay, we'll go unmatted. TIFF files are probably hard to use if you've never used them before, but you know, may as well. I'm also gonna import my matte because it's pretty useful. Now there is one problem. By default, since it's an image sequence, it goes at 30 frames per second, and I recorded at 29.97. So just interpret your footage and change that to whatever frame rate you have. Obviously, if you record it in 30, you're good to go. I mean, Oh wait, I didn't want to import that again. Let's interpret that footage. And you can pretty much do this on anything to change the frame rate. You do want to be careful. I'm only changing it by a fraction of a frame, so it shouldn't be that bad. But if you're changing it by like 15 frames, you know, watch out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the removal, and we can just drag that over the first frame. There we go. And you can just kind of reload your footage, and it will like give us the new render. And you see if I play the first like 10 frames or so, you see that it's actually falling on really well. Of course, it doesn't look perfect, but obviously I didn't track perfectly, and I didn't do a perfect Photoshop job. But we can fix a lot of this in After Effects, and I'm going to show you basically how I do it. Okay, so we're also going to load in our matte, because we're going to need that. And I'm rhyming, obviously. I'm going to reload both of these, because obviously I'm rendering as I record this. So you see we have our matte file, which is Illuma matte, meaning black and white and gray. Cool. So what you can do is one of two things. You can either use Illuma matte, which would work perfectly, or what I'm going to do is a bit different, and there's a reason why I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to take away the black, because it actually gives us a border for softening. I'll show you what I mean. So load color key, pick black, and that should pretty much remove it. You can add a bit of color, not color tolerance, but feather, if you need it. I'm going to use a feather of 1. And now you see we have our matte, which looks pretty good. And then to actually use this matte for our render, just go to matte and then select alpha for matte. And you see if we now disable this layer, we now have this whole thing isolated, and this is just the masked off area. Obviously, it's not going to look different because I just masked it off, but you can do some stuff to help it out. Let's see. You can like soften the edges or something. So go to like roughen edges, and then you can like increase the edge size and the or decrease the edge. Oh wait, my bad, guys. Make sure you put make sure you put roughen edges on the matte. That's why we made a matte. My mistake. There you go. You see if we zoom in here, you see the difference when I change roughen edge. So I'm gonna change roughen edges to like 25, so it doesn't actually reveal the mouth. And then you want to go to fractal influence. Go to 0. You don't want a messy shape. Actually, I'm gonna disable this layer because it looks. You can see this easier. So though with fractal, without fractal. So leave fractal off, and then take your sharpness down to 0, which kind of gives us a nice feather. If we re-enable this, it now looks, you know, not perfect, but a lot better. Without roughen edges, with roughen edges, looks a lot better. Now, obviously, you do see like a bit of a crease over here because you see like the edge of my lip. So you want to take your roughen edges, bring that down to like 18 or something. There we go. That's a bit better. Awesome. And then another touch you can do, if you really want to, you can add a bit of color correction. In fact, I would encourage it. So just go to levels. And obviously, you might not need to do this if you're not like removing your mouth. If you're just doing a street sign, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But we're just going to correct the colors. We'll start with green, which needs to be lightened up just a tad. There we go. We'll move on to the blues. And you want to use this panel over here to actually isolate the colors. It's easier to see. Need to line that up just a tad. Okay. And now we'll go to the reds, which probably matter the most because, you know, my skin's like whitish red. Pink, if you will. And this needs to be, I guess it also needs to be lightened just a bit. There we go. And if I go back to RGB, there's a subtle difference if I turn this off and on. You see, matches my skin tone a bit better. Obviously, you can mess around with the opacity a bit. I mean, if you set it to 95, you won't see through it, and it will look a lot better. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna show you that this track actually worked out really well by reloading both of these. Obviously, you want to let it render out completely before you do this, but I am doing this live, or somewhat live. I don't know what you would consider that. And you see it's tracking on very well. I'm just gonna... Another thing you can do is if you want to get better lighting, because obviously lighting changes as you move the object around. What you can do is instead of using one clean plate, you can use like 4, all at different times, like frame 1, 20, and 50, or whatever you want. And that will kind of like average out the transition of lighting, or the change of lighting, so that can also help out. But you do see that it's actually sticking on very well. It is sticking on. Obviously, it's not blending in. But I mean, this is like the equivalent of like putting a fake digital tattoo. Like if this was a tattoo, it would work beautifully because you don't need to blend it in because it's a different color. But obviously, I picked a really hard example. But I thought it would be cool. Oh, it's almost done rendering. Has a few more frames to go, and then I can show you a little difference once it's done with that. I mean, always like, I guess you could also go to brightness and contrast, but really it's not worth your time. Just do like 5 clean plates. The more clean plates you do, the better it is. I mean, it only took me like half a minute to do it in Photoshop, and I wasn't really trying to do it well then, so. And some of this stuff's really easy. Again, if you're doing a street sign, all you have to do is make the whole thing white and then replace the text. Does not take any Photoshop skill whatsoever. So if I RAM preview this, oh wait, I should probably disable the audio. There we go. Now let's RAM preview that. Ba-ba-bum. And there you go. I mean, it actually doesn't look half bad for like not blending in the lighting. Spend more time with lighting. That's pretty much all it is. The track though, perfect. I'll show you it isolated, just in case you want to see. So you can actually like mask out layers and isolate it. I mean, here's a cool idea. If you guys want to test it out, film yourself like nodding your head, track your eyes, and remove your pupils or change the color of your pupils. That's a cool idea. I don't know. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like below. It helps people find this channel, and more people will learn, which is good. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, good for you. If you're confused, rewatch the video or leave me a message, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.